The year was 2387. Earth had been part of the Galactic Federation for almost 100 years. Humans worked alongside alien species from across the galaxy. They traded goods, shared knowledge, and helped each other. It was supposed to be time of peace, but peace never lasts forever. The Zephyrian Empire had been growing stronger for decades. They were a warrior race with gray skin and red eyes that burned like fire. Their ships were fast and deadly. Their weapons could cut through steel like butter. Worst of all, they wanted to rule the entire galaxy. For 3 years, they had been attacking Federation worlds. One by one, planets fell to their might. The Federation fleet fought back, but it was not enough. The Zephyrians had better technology. Their shields could stop most weapons. Their plasma cannons could destroy entire cities. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Blackstar. He was a tall man with brown hair and calm blue eyes. He had been in the Federation Navy for 15 years. He had seen many battles, but none like this one. The Blackstar was different from other Federation ships. It was humanity's newest warship, built with ideas that only humans could dream up, while other ships relied on energy weapons and traditional shields. The Blackstar used kinetic weapons that fired solid metal projectiles at incredible speeds. It had armor that could change shape during battle. Most importantly, it had an artificial intelligence that could learn and adapt. Morrison looked. At the main screen, the planet New Geneva was under attack. It was home to 10 million people, including many humans. The Federation had sent a fleet to defend it, but things were going badly. "Captain, we're getting a transmission from Admiral Kane," said Lieutenant Amy Brooks. She was the ship's tactical officer, a woman with short red hair and sharp green eyes. She had grown up on a military base and knew how to fight. "Put her through," Morrison said. Admiral Lisa Kane appeared on the screen. She was an older woman with gray hair and worry lines around her eyes. Behind her, Morrison could see the chaos of a battle command center. People were running around, alarms were blaring, and red lights flashed everywhere. "Jake, thank God you're here," Kane said. Her voice was tired and scared. "We're losing this fight. The Zephyrians have 47 ships. They're led by War Commander Thexville. He's never lost a battle." Morrison knew about Thexville. He was famous throughout the galaxy for his cruelty and skill. He had destroyed entire fleets without losing a single ship. "What's the situation?" Morrison asked. "We had 23 ships when the battle started," Kane said. "Now we have 6. The colony ships are trying to evacuate, but they need more time. The Zephyrians are pushing through our lines. Their weapons are too strong." On the screen, Morrison could see explosions in the distance. Federation ships were dying. Good people were giving their lives to buy time for the civilians below. "How long do you need?" Morrison asked. 2 hours. Maybe 3 if we're lucky. But I don't think we can hold them that long. Morrison looked around his bridge. His crew was small but skilled. Besides Brooks, there was Chief Engineer Danny Cooper, a young man who could fix anything. Science Officer Carl Martinez was quiet but brilliant. Communications Officer Beth Torres kept everyone connected. Navigation Officer Rick Hayes made sure they went where they needed to go. "Admiral, we'll hold the line," Morrison said. Kane shook her head. "Jake, you're just one ship. Even the Blackstar can't fight an entire fleet." "Maybe not," Morrison said. "But we have to try." The transmission ended. Morrison turned to his crew. They were all looking at him, waiting for orders. He could see fear in their eyes, but also determination. They were human. They did not give up easily. "Danny, how are our weapons?" Morrison asked. Cooper checked his instruments. "All rail guns are ready, Captain. The main cannon is charged and ready to fire. Our armor is in adaptive mode. Amy, What do you think about their formation? Brooks studied the tactical display. They're using a standard attack pattern. 3 groups of ships in a triangle formation. Very organized, but maybe too organized. If we can break their formation, we might have a chance. Martinez spoke up. Captain, I've been studying their previous battles. They always use the same tactics. They rely on their central command ship to coordinate everything. If we can disrupt that, we might have a chance, Morrison finished. Good work, Carl. The Blackstar moved through space toward the battle. Behind them, the evacuation ships were loading as many people as they could. Families were being separated. Children were crying. But they were alive, and Morrison was going to keep it that way. Captain, we're approaching the battle zone, Hayes reported. Morrison could see the enemy fleet on the main screen. 47 ships, all bigger than the Blackstar. They moved in perfect formation, like a deadly dance. At the center was the command ship, twice as large as the others. They've noticed us, Brooks said. 3 ships are breaking off to intercept. Morrison smiled. Just 3? They don't think much of us. Should we retreat and try to flank them? Torres asked. No, Morrison said. We go straight at them. Show them what humans can do. The 3 Zephyrian ships moved toward the Blackstar. They were sleek and deadly, with weapons that glowed with purple energy. Morrison had seen those weapons destroy Federation ships in seconds. All hands, this is the captain, Morrison announced over the ship's communication system. We're about to engage the enemy. This is what we trained for. Remember, we're not just fighting for the Federation. We're fighting for humanity. Show them what we're made of. A battle was about to begin. The 3 Zephyrian ships moved toward the Blackstar, like hunters closing in on prey. War Commander Vexful watched from his command ship, his red eyes glowing with confidence. He had destroyed thousands of ships in his career. One more would not matter. Destroyer Wing 7. Eliminate the human vessel, he commanded through the communication system. His voice was deep and harsh, like grinding metal. Make it quick. We have a planet to conquer. The lead Zephyrian ship was twice the size of the Blackstar. Its hull was dark blue with silver markings that showed the crew's battle victories. Purple energy crackled along its weapon arrays. The ship's captain, Sub-Commander Vextar, had destroyed 12 Federation ships in the past month. Alone. Human vessel, you will surrender now or be destroyed. Vextar transmitted to the Blackstar. Morrison looked at his crew. They were all at their stations, hands steady on their controls. He could see the determination in their eyes. They were scared, but they were ready. Amy, target their lead ship, Morrison ordered. Danny, give me full power to the railguns. Brooks worked at her station, her fingers flying over the controls. Target locked, Captain. Range is 50,000 kilometers and closing. Cooper was in the engine room, pushing the ship's systems to their limits. Captain, I'm routing power from life support to the weapons. We'll have full power for about 10 minutes. That's all we need, Morrison said. Fire when ready. The Blackstar's main railgun fired. It was not like the energy weapons the Zephyrians were used to. Instead of a beam of light, it fired a solid metal projectile at incredible speed. The projectile was no bigger than a baseball, but it was moving at 30% the speed of light. The Zephyrian ship's shields flared bright purple as the projectile hit them. The aliens had designed their shields to stop energy weapons. But this was different. This was solid matter moving at impossible speed. The projectile punched through the shields like they were not there. It hit the Zephyrian ship's hull and kept going. It tore through armor, through corridors, through the ship's reactor core. The destroyer exploded in a ball of fire and metal. On the Zephyrian command ship, Vexful stood up from his command chair. His red eyes were wide with shock. What happened? How did they penetrate our shields? I don't know, War Commander, his science officer stammered. Their weapon was not energy-based. It was a physical projectile. Dexval had never seen anything like it. In all his years of battle, no enemy had ever used such primitive weapons. Energy weapons were the standard throughout the galaxy. But these humans were different. Destroy them, he roared. All ships, destroy them now. The remaining 2 destroyers opened fire with everything they had. Purple energy beams lanced out toward the Blackstar. But Morrison was ready. Rick, evasive. Maneuvers, he ordered. Amy, return fire. The Blackstar twisted and turned through space, its adaptive armor shifting to deflect the energy beams. Hayes was a skilled pilot, and he made the ship dance between the deadly purple lights. Brooks fired the secondary railguns in rapid succession. The smaller projectiles struck the second destroyer, tearing holes in its hull. The ship began to spin out of control, atmosphere venting from multiple breaches. Martinez was studying the enemy's attack patterns from his science station. Captain, they're not adapting to our tactics. They keep using the same firing sequences. That's because they've never had to adapt, Morrison said. They've always had superior technology. They don't know how to fight when that advantage is gone. The third destroyer tried to ram the Blackstar. It was a desperate move, but the Zephyrian captain thought he could take the human ship with him. He was wrong. Cooper had been working on the armor systems. Captain, I've got an idea. What if we let them hit us? Are you crazy? Torres asked from her station. Maybe, Cooper said with a grin, but the armor can reshape itself. If we time it right, ... Morrison understood. Do it. The Zephyrian ship came in fast, its bow aimed at the Blackstar's side. At the last second, Cooper activated the adaptive armor. The Blackstar's hull flowed like liquid metal, creating a channel that guided the enemy ship past them instead of into them. As the destroyer slid past, Brooks fired the main railgun at point-blank range. The projectile went straight through the enemy ship from bow to stern. The destroyer broke apart like a toy dot in less than 5 minutes. The Blackstar had destroyed 3 Zephyrian ships. Across the galaxy, no Federation vessel had ever achieved such a victory. Dexval could not believe what he was seeing. His best ships, his most experienced crews, destroyed by a single human vessel. It was impossible. It was humiliating. How are they doing this? He demanded. His tactical officer studied the sensor readings. Their weapons are completely different from ours. They use kinetic energy instead of plasma. Our shields are not designed to stop solid projectiles. Then adapt our tactics. Dexval snarled. I don't know how, War Commander. This is not in our training. And that was the problem. The Zephyrians had relied on their technological advantage for so long that they had forgotten how to think creatively. They followed their training, used their standard tactics, and expected to win through superior firepower. But humans were different. They adapted. They improvised. They found new ways to use old ideas. Morrison looked at the tactical display. The 3 destroyers were gone, but 44 ships remained. The odds were still impossible, but they had proved something important. The Zephyrians could be beaten. All stations report, Morrison ordered. Weapons are functioning normally. Brooks reported. We've used about 20% of our ammunition. Engines are running hot but stable, Cooper said. I can give you everything you need, Captain. Sensors are picking up movement in the main fleet, Martinez added. They're changing formation. I think we got their attention. Morrison nodded. The first phase of the battle was over. Now came the hard part. They had to face the entire Zephyrian fleet, and Dexval would not underestimate them again. Beth, send a message to Admiral Kane, Morrison ordered. Tell her we're engaging the main fleet. And Beth? Yes, Captain? Tell her that humans don't give up. The Blackstar turned toward the enemy fleet. Behind them, the evacuation ships continued their desperate work. Every minute the Blackstar could hold the line meant more lives saved. Morrison looked at his crew. They were still scared, but now they were also proud. They had done something no one thought possible. They had beaten the Zephyrians at their own game. Ready for round 2? Morrison asked. His crew smiled. They were ready for anything. War Commander Thexval was furious. His red eyes burned brighter than ever as he stared at the tactical display. 3 of his best ships had been destroyed by a single human vessel. It was unthinkable. It was an insult to everything he believed. I want that ship destroyed, he told his fleet. All ships, attack Formation Delta. Surround them. Use everything we have. 20 ships moved toward the Blackstar. They spread out in a wide circle, trying to attack from all directions at once. Thexval was not going to make the same mistake twice. He would use overwhelming force. Morrison watched the enemy ships closing. The Blackstar was alone in the middle of space, surrounded by enemies. Most captains would have tried to run. But Morrison was not most captains. Spartan, are you ready? He asked. Yes, Captain, came the reply from the ship's artificial intelligence. The voice was calm and female, chosen to sound friendly to the human crew. But Spartan was more than just a voice. She was the ship's brain, able to process information faster than any human could. What do you think of their formation? Morrison asked. They are trying to surround us, Spartan said. But their ships are too spread out. They cannot provide covering fire for each other. If we attack one section, the others will be too far away to help. That's what I was thinking, Morrison said. Amy, pick a target, the biggest ship you can find. Brooks studied the enemy formation. There's a heavy cruiser at bearing 270. It's leading a group of 5 ships. That's our target, Morrison said. Danny, I need everything you can give me. Cooper was already working miracles in the engine room. He had taken power from non-essential systems and pushed the engines beyond their normal limits. The ship was running on pure human determination and engineering skill. You've got it, Captain, Cooper said. But I can't keep this up forever. These systems weren't designed for this kind of stress. Just give me what you can, Morrison said. Rick, take us straight at that cruiser. Full speed. The Blackstar accelerated toward the enemy formation. The Zephyrian ships opened fire, filling space with purple energy beams. But the human ship was fast and unpredictable. Haze twisted and turned, making the ship dance between the deadly lights. They're trying to box us in, Brooks reported. If we stay on this course, we'll fly right into their trap. Good, Morrison said. That's exactly what we want them to think. The Blackstar flew straight toward the heavy cruiser. The Zephyrian captain was confident. The human ship was flying into a trap. There was no way it could escape. But at the last second, Morrison gave a new order. Danny, emergency stop. Amy, fire everything. Cooper reversed the engines at full power. The Blackstar stopped so suddenly that the crew was thrown against their restraints. The sudden stop was impossible for most ships, but the Blackstar's adaptive systems allowed it. The Zephyrian ships had been moving to intercept the Blackstar's projected course. When the human ship stopped, they flew right past it, exposing their weak rear sections. Brooks did not waste the opportunity. The main railgun fired, followed by all the secondary weapons. The heavy cruiser took a direct hit to its engine section. The ship exploded in a brilliant fireball. The other 4 ships in the group tried to turn around, but they were moving too fast. Before they could change course, the Blackstar fired again. 2 more destroyers died in seconds. Impossible. Dexval roared from his command ship. How are they doing this? His science officer was studying the sensor readings frantically. War Commander, their tactics make no sense. They stopped in the middle of a battle. No ship should be able to do that. Then how did they do it? Dexval demanded. I don't know, the science officer admitted. Their technology is different from ours. They seem to be able to adapt there. Ship systems in real time. Dexval was learning what many enemies had discovered over the centuries. Humans were dangerous because they did not follow the rules. They improvised. They found new ways to use old tools. They turned weaknesses into strengths. Martinez was monitoring the enemy communications from his station. Captain, I'm picking up chatter from their fleet. They're confused. They don't know how to respond to our tactics. That's because they're used to fighting by the book, Morrison said. They follow procedures. We make it up as we go along. The battle continued. The Blackstar twisted and turned through space, striking at the enemy fleet like a wolf among sheep. Every time the Zephyrians thought they had the human ship trapped, it did something unexpected. When 5 ships tried to surround the Blackstar, Cooper ejected coolant from the engines, creating a cloud of frozen gas. The Blackstar hid in the cloud while Brooks picked off the enemy ships one by one. When a group of destroyers tried to ram the ship, Hayes flew the Blackstar between 2 of them, causing them to crash into each other instead. When the enemy tried to jam their communications, Torres used the ship's hull as a giant antenna, boosting their signal strength beyond anything the Zephyrians had seen. Each victory was small, but they were adding up. The Zephyrian fleet was losing ships steadily. More importantly, they were losing confidence. War Commander, his tactical officer said nervously, perhaps we should retreat and regroup. Dexval turned on him with fury. Retreat? I have never retreated from any battle. I will not be defeated by a single human ship. But even as he spoke, Dexval was beginning to doubt himself. He had fought hundreds of battles against dozens of species. He had always won through superior technology and disciplined tactics. But the humans were different. They did not fight like anyone else. The Blackstar's crew was working like a machine. Cooper kept the engines running far beyond their design limits. Brooks found new ways to use their weapons with every shot. Martinez predicted the enemy's moves before they made them. Hayes flew the ship like it was part of his own body, and Morrison held them all together. He made decisions in seconds that other captains would need minutes to consider. He trusted his crew completely, and they trusted him. Captain, Brooks said, I'm reading a massive energy buildup from their command ship. I think they're charging some kind of superweapon. Morrison looked at the tactical display. Dexval's command ship was twice the size of any other vessel in the fleet. If it had a superweapon, it could destroy the Blackstar in one shot. How long until it's ready? Morrison asked. 3 minutes, maybe 4. Brooks said. Morrison made a decision that would have seemed insane to any other captain. Rick, set course for the command ship. We're going to ram it, sir. Hayes asked, not sure he had heard correctly. You heard me. Full speed, straight at their command ship. The Blackstar turned toward the massive enemy vessel. The crew knew it was a desperate move, but they also knew their captain had not let them down yet. Danny, I need everything you can give me, Morrison said. Amy, prepare for close-range combat. We're going to board that ship. The Blackstar accelerated toward the command ship. The final phase of the battle was about to begin. The Blackstar raced toward the massive Zephyrian command ship. Dexval watched in disbelief as the human vessel came straight at him. No captain had ever dared to attack his flagship directly. They're going to ram us, his tactical officer shouted. Impossible, Dexval said. They would be destroyed in the impact. But Morrison had no intention of destroying his ship. He had a different plan, one that only humans would be crazy enough to try. Danny, how are those modifications coming? Morrison asked over the communication system. Cooper was working frantically in the engine room. He had been changing the ship's systems during the battle, turning them into something no engineer had ever imagined. "Almost ready, Captain, but I'm not sure this will work." "It'll work," Morrison said. "It has to." The Blackstar was only seconds away from impact. Every gun on the command ship was firing at them. Purple energy beams filled space around the human vessel, but Hayes was flying like a man possessed, dodging between the deadly lights. "Brace for impact." Morrison ordered Dot at the last second. Cooper activated his modifications. The Blackstar's adaptive armor flowed like liquid metal, forming a sharp point at the front of the ship. The armor was designed to change shape during battle, but Cooper had pushed it far beyond its normal limits. The Blackstar hit the command. Ship's shields at full speed. The purple energy field flared and crackled, but the ship's pointed armor pierced through like a needle through cloth. The Blackstar buried itself deep in the command ship's hull. Dexval was thrown from his command chair as his ship shuddered under the impact. Alarms were blaring everywhere. His crew was shouting in panic. "Damage report," he demanded. "Hull breach on decks 7 through 12, his damage control officer reported. "The human ship is lodged in our forward section." "Then we have them." "Trapped," Dexval said. "Seal off those sections. Let them suffocate in space." But Morrison was not finished. "Amy, activate the boarding protocol. Danny, open the airlock." The Blackstar's crew had prepared for this moment. They had trained for boarding actions, but never anything like this. They were going to invade an enemy ship while it was still. Fighting .20 Federation Marines were waiting in the Blackstar's cargo bay. They were led by Sergeant Mike Torres, Beth's brother. He was a tough man who had fought in ground battles across the galaxy. "Remember," Morrison told them over the communication system, "we're not just trying to capture this ship. We're trying to end this battle. Take out their command center, and the whole fleet will fall apart." The Marines put on their armor and checked their weapons. They were scared, but they were also proud. They were about to do something that had never been done before Dot Cooper opened the airlock between the two ships. The Blackstar's hull had cut deep into the command ship, creating a tunnel between them. The Marines rushed through, their boots clanging on the metal deck. The Zephyrians were waiting for them. The alien warriors were tall and strong, with gray skin and burning red eyes. They carried energy weapons that could cut through most armor. But they had never fought humans in close combat. The first Marine through the tunnel was Private Jenny Brooks, Amy's younger sister. She was small and quick, perfect for close quarters fighting. A Zephyrian warrior fired at her with his energy weapon, but she rolled under the beam and came up shooting. Her kinetic rifle fired solid bullets instead of energy beams. The Zephyrian's personal shield stopped the first shot, but the second and third punched through. The alien warrior fell. More Marines poured through the tunnel. The Zephyrians fought back with discipline and skill, but they were not prepared for human tactics. The Marines used smoke grenades to confuse their enemies. They threw flashbang grenades that blinded the aliens. They fought dirty, using every trick they had learned. Sergeant Torres led his team toward the command center. The Zephyrians tried to stop them, but the humans were unstoppable. They moved like a pack of wolves, covering each other and striking at weak points. On the Blackstar's bridge, Morrison watched the battle through the Marines' helmet cameras. He could see his people fighting and dying in the corridors of the enemy ship, but they were winning. "Amy, can you target their weapon systems from here?" he asked. Dot Brooks was working at her station, trying to find a way to help the Marines. "I think so. If I can tap into their computer system, ... "Do it," Morrison said. "Martinez, help her." The two officers worked together, using skills they had never learned in the academy. They were improvising, finding new ways to use their equipment. It was pure human ingenuity. "Got it," Martinez said. "I'm in their computer system. I can see their ship's layout. There." Brooks pointed at her screen. "The command center is 3 decks up from the Marines' position. If they can reach it." Morrison opened a channel to Sergeant Torres. "Mike, you need to go up 3 decks. The command center is at coordinates 7 Alpha 9. Torres was breathing hard as he fought through the ship's corridors. "Roger that." "Captain, we're on our way." The Marines fought their way up through the ship. Every corridor was a battle. Every doorway was a potential trap. But they kept moving forward, driven by human determination. Dexval was in his command center, watching his ship fall apart around him. His crew was panicking. His warriors were being defeated by a handful of humans. It was impossible, but it was happening. "War Commander," his communications officer said, "the other ships are requesting orders. They don't know what to do." That was the problem. The Zephyrian fleet was trained to follow orders from the command ship. Without clear leadership, they were lost. And Dexval was too busy fighting for his life to give orders. The command center doors exploded inward. Sergeant Torres and his Marines rushed in, their weapons ready. The Zephyrian command crew reached for their weapons, but the humans were faster. "Surrender," Torres shouted. "Drop your weapons." Dexval stood in the center of the room, his red eyes blazing with fury. He was a warrior who had never been defeated. He would not surrender to humans. "You think you have won?" He snarled. "This is just one ship. The Empire has thousands more." "Maybe," Torres said, "but right now you're done." The war commander reached for his weapon, but Jenny Brooks was quicker. Her rifle fired once, and Dexval fell to the deck. The greatest Zephyrian commander was dead. With their leader gone, the Zephyrian fleet began to fall apart. Ship captains started making their own decisions. Some tried to continue the fight. Others began to retreat. The perfect formation that had seemed so threatening was breaking down. Morrison watched it all from the Blackstar's bridge. They had done it. They had beaten the impossible odds. But the battle was not over yet. "Captain," Brooks said, "the remaining ships are scattering. Some are heading back toward Zephyrian space. Others are trying to regroup." "Then we finish this," Morrison said. "All Marines, prepare for extraction. We're going after the rest of the fleet." The Blackstar pulled away from the command ship, leaving it dead in space. The human vessel was damaged, but still fighting. Its crew was tired, but determined. They had proven that humans could not be defeated by superior technology alone. They had shown that creativity and determination could overcome any obstacle. The final phase of the battle was about to begin. The Zephyrian fleet was in chaos. With War Commander Dexval dead and their command ship destroyed, the alien warriors did not know what to do. They had been trained to follow orders, not to think for themselves. Captain Morrison watched the enemy ships on his tactical display. Some were trying to flee back to Zephyrian space. Others were attempting to regroup for another attack. A few were just floating in space, their crews too shocked to move. "Amy, how many ships are left?" Morrison asked. Brooks counted the contacts on her screen. 23 ships, Captain. But they're scattered across the system. They're not working together anymore. That's our advantage, Morrison said. "Spartan, can you calculate attack patterns for individual ships?" The ship's artificial intelligence responded immediately. "Yes, Captain. Without central coordination, each ship will fall back on standard combat procedures. I can predict their moves with 92% accuracy." Morrison looked at his crew. They were tired, but they were not finished. The battle had been going on for hours, and they had been fighting impossible odds. But they were still alive, and they were still fighting. "Danny, how are our systems holding up?" Morrison asked. Cooper's voice came from the engine room. "We're running on fumes, Captain. The engines are way past their safety limits. The weapons are overheating. And we're down to about 30% of our ammunition." "But we're still fighting," Morrison said. "That's what matters." The Blackstar moved toward the nearest group of enemy ships. There were 5 destroyers trying to form a defensive formation. But without orders from their command ship, they were just guessing at what to do. "Rick, take us in fast," Morrison ordered. "Amy, target the lead ship." The Blackstar accelerated toward the enemy formation. The Zephyrian ships opened fire, but their aim was poor. They were scared and confused, not the disciplined warriors they had been at the start of the battle. The main railgun fired, and the lead destroyer exploded. The other 4 ships tried to scatter, but they were too slow. Brooks picked them off, one by one, using the ship's remaining ammunition carefully. "That's 5 down," Brooks reported. 18 to go. Morrison opened a channel to the surviving Federation ships. Admiral Kane's voice came through, weak but determined. "Jake, what's your status?" she asked. "We're still fighting, Admiral," Morrison said. "The enemy fleet is broken up. We can handle them if we work together." "Roger that," Kane said. "We have 3 ships left. We'll support you however we can." The remaining Federation ships were damaged, but they were still fighting. They formed up with the Blackstar, creating a small but determined fleet. For the next hour, they hunted down the scattered Zephyrian ships. It was not easy. The enemy. Warriors were skilled fighters, even without their command structure. But they were fighting alone, and humans were never alone. Martinez had been monitoring enemy communications throughout the battle. "Captain, I'm picking up something interesting. The Zephyrian ships are talking to each other, trying to coordinate, but they're arguing about who should be in command." "That's perfect," Morrison said. "They're wasting time fighting each other instead of us." One group of Zephyrian ships tried to make a run for the edge of the system, but Hayes was too good a pilot. The Blackstar intercepted them before they could escape. The railguns spoke again, and more enemy ships died. Another group tried to hide behind New Geneva's moon, but Torres had been monitoring their movements from the communications station. She guided the Blackstar to their hiding spot, and they were destroyed before they could react. As the battle continued, something remarkable happened. The news of the Blackstar's victory began to spread throughout the galaxy. Other Federation ships heard about the human vessel that had destroyed an entire Zephyrian fleet. The story grew with each telling. On Federation worlds, people gathered around communication screens to watch the battle. They saw a single human ship fighting against impossible odds. They saw creativity and determination defeating superior technology. They saw what humans could do when they refused to give up. The Zephyrian Empire was watching too. In their capital city, the High Command was in emergency session. They could not believe what they were seeing. Their greatest fleet, led by their best commander, had been defeated by a single human ship. How is this possible? A Supreme Commander demanded. "We have the best technology in the galaxy. Our warriors are trained for birth. How can we lose to humans?" His advisors had no answer. They had studied human military tactics, but they had never seen anything like this. The humans were not following any known strategies. They were making it up as they went along. "Perhaps," one advisor said carefully, "we have underestimated them." Back in the New Geneva system, the last Zephyrian ships were making their final stand. 6 destroyers had grouped together near the system's edge. Their captains had finally agreed on a leader, and they were trying to fight like the disciplined force they once were. But it was too late. The Blackstar and the surviving Federation ships surrounded them. The enemy was outnumbered and outfought. Their morale was broken, and their tactics were predictable. "This is Captain Morrison of the USS Blackstar. Morrison broadcast to the enemy ships. You are surrounded. Surrender now, and your crews will be treated according to Federation law. There was a long silence. Then one of the Zephyrian captains responded, We are warriors of the Empire. We do not surrender. Then you will die as warriors, Morrison said sadly. I'm sorry it has to end this way. The final battle was swift and brutal. The Zephyrian ships fought bravely, but they were no match for the combined Federation force. One by one, they were destroyed. The last ship tried to ram the Blackstar, but Hayes saw it coming and moved aside at the last second. Then it was over. The space around New Geneva was filled with debris from 47 Zephyrian ships. The mighty fleet that had conquered dozens of worlds was gone. Morrison slumped in his captain's chair. The battle had lasted 6 hours, and he was exhausted. But they had won. Against all odds, they had won. Casualty report, he said quietly. Brooks checked her instruments. We lost 8 Marines during the boarding action. Engineering section took some damage, but no fatalities. Medical Bay reports 12 wounded. It was a light casualty list, considering what they had faced. Morrison thought about the 8 Marines who had died. They had given their lives to save 10 million civilians on New Geneva. It was a trade any soldier would make, but that did not make it easier. Danny, how's the ship? Morrison asked. Cooper's voice was tired but proud. She's beat up pretty bad, Captain. The engines need a complete overhaul. The main railgun is cracked and needs replacement. But she's still flying. That's all that matters, Morrison said. Beth, open a channel to Admiral Kane. Admiral Kane appeared on the main screen. She looked older than she had 6 hours ago, but there was pride in her eyes. Jake, I don't know how to thank you. You saved the entire system. We all did it together, Admiral, Morrison said. My crew, your ships, the Marines, it was a team effort. The evacuation ships got everyone off the planet, Kane said. 10 million people owe their lives to you and your crew. Morrison looked around his bridge. His crew was exhausted, but they were smiling. They had done something impossible. They had proven that humans belonged in the galaxy as equals, not as junior partners. Over the following days, news of the Battle of New Geneva spread throughout the galaxy. The story grew with each telling, but the core truth remained the same. A single human ship had defeated an entire Zephyrian fleet through courage, creativity, and determination. Other Federation species began to look at humans differently. They had always respected human technology and industry. Now they respected human fighting spirit. Military academies across the galaxy began studying the Blackstar's tactics. The Zephyrian Empire was forced to reassess their expansion plans. They had lost their best fleet and their greatest commander. More importantly, they had lost their confidence. Every battle now carried the risk of facing another Blackstar moment. War Commander Thexfel's replacement was a cautious leader named Kekstar. He studied the battle recordings for months, trying to understand how the humans had won. But the more he studied, the more confused he became. They broke every rule of military engagement, he told his staff. They used weapons that should not work. They employed tactics that make no sense. How do we fight an enemy that does not follow any logical pattern? His science officer had an answer. Perhaps, War Commander, logic is not their greatest strength. Perhaps their strength is the ability to abandon logic when necessary. It was a concept that the Zephyrians could not understand. They were a warrior race that valued discipline and order above all else. The idea of fighting without a plan was foreign to them. Meanwhile, the USS Blackstar was undergoing repairs at a Federation shipyard. Captain Morrison had been promoted to Admiral, and he was now in charge of training other captains in human tactical doctrine. The ship itself had become famous throughout the galaxy. Crews from other vessels came to see the scarred hull and patched armor. They wanted to understand how such a small ship had achieved such a great victory. But Morrison knew the real secret was not the ship. It was the crew. It was Danny Cooper's ability to make impossible repairs under fire. It was Amy Brooks' instinct for finding the enemy's weak spots. It was Carl Ma. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance, watching the stars through the massive view screen. The ship had been patrolling the outer rim of human space for 3 months now. It was quiet work, but Jake knew how quickly that could. Change in space. The year was 2387, and humans had been part of the Galactic Council for almost 50 years. The council was made up of 247 different alien species, each with their own customs and beliefs. Making decisions took a very long time because everyone had to agree before anything could happen. "Captain," called Amy Carter from the communication station, "I'm picking up a distress signal. It's coming from the mining colony on Kepler 442b. Jake walked over to her station. Amy was young but skilled, and she never missed important signals. "What are they saying?" Amy's face went pale as she listened to her headset. "It's bad, sir. There's been some kind of earthquake. The main dome is cracking. They're saying the whole colony might collapse." "How many people are there?" Jake asked. "About 12,000 civilians, sir. Mostly miners and their families." Jake felt his stomach drop. 12,000 people. That was a small city worth of lives in danger. "Tony, set course for Kepler 442b. Maximum speed." Tony Walsh, the ship's navigator, looked confused. "Sir, shouldn't we report this to the council first? Get permission for a rescue mission?" Jake knew Tony was right by the rules. Any major action needed approval from the Galactic Council. But Jake also knew how the council worked. They would debate and argue and form committees. That could take weeks. "Lisa," Jake called to his chief engineer, "how long to reach Kepler 442b? Lisa Brooks checked her instruments. "At maximum warp, about 6 hours, sir." "Do it," Jake ordered. "Amy, send a message to Admiral Sullivan. Tell her what's happening. Also send word to the council, but don't wait for their reply." The ship jumped to warp speed. Jake knew he was breaking protocol, but he couldn't just sit there while people died. Meanwhile, at the Galactic Council station, the emergency session was beginning. The Great Hall was filled with representatives from all 247 species. Elder Zixthara of the Zephyrians was speaking. Her crystalline body glowed with authority. "We have received a distress call from a human colony," she announced. "This requires careful consideration. I propose we form a committee to study the situation." The Valdari representative, Mind Speaker Veltar, nodded his large head. "Yes, we must consider all possibilities. What if this rescue damages the planet's ecosystem? What if we make things worse? I suggest we take at least 3 weeks to think about this properly." Ambassador Claire Watson, the human representative, stood up. "Elder Zixthara, with respect, we don't have 3 weeks. Those people are dying right now. But proper procedure must be followed," insisted the aquatic Merlon representative. "What about water contamination protocols? What about environmental impact studies? We cannot simply rush into action." Claire felt frustrated. This was exactly why she hated council meetings. Every minute we spend talking is a minute those colonists don't have. The gaseous Varanasi representative spoke in his whispery voice. "Perhaps solid matter beings should not be rescued by other solid matter beings. This goes against the natural order." The debate continued for hours. The hive thinkers wanted to know if individual rescue was morally correct. The crystalline builders insisted on architectural surveys before any rescue attempt. The plasma entities questioned whether physical beings deserved saving at all. Back on the Defiance, Jake watched the countdown timer. 3 hours until they reached Kepler 442b. Amy was still receiving distress signals, but they were getting weaker. "Captain," Amy said quietly, "the colony's main power is failing. They're saying the dome cracks are spreading." Jake clenched his fists. He knew that right now, the council was probably still forming committees and subcommittees. They were probably debating whether humans had the right to save other humans. "Sir," Tony said from his station, "I'm getting reports from other human ships in the area. The UES Liberty and the UES Freedom are also responding to the distress call." Jake smiled. Admiral Kate Sullivan was clearly thinking the same way he was. The human fleet was moving to help, with or without council permission. "Amy, patch me through to Admiral Sullivan." A moment later, Admiral Sullivan's face appeared on the screen. She was a tough woman in her 50s, with gray hair and sharp eyes. "Captain Morrison, I assume you're thinking what I'm thinking." "Yes, ma'am. We can't wait for the council to make up their minds." "My thoughts exactly. I've got 12 ships. Heading to Kepler 442b. We'll have a full rescue operation running within hours." "What about the council, Admiral?" Kate Sullivan's expression was grim. "The council can debate all they want. We're going to save those people. We'll deal with the consequences later." The transmission ended. Jake looked around his bridge. His crew was watching him, waiting for orders. These were good people, and they understood what was at stake. "You all heard the Admiral," Jake said. "We're going in without council approval. Anyone who wants to file an objection can do so later. Right now, we have lives to save." Lisa Brooks spoke up first. "I'm with you, Captain. Those people need help now, not in 3 weeks." "Same here," said Tony Walsh. "The council can form all the committees they want. We're going to do what's right." Amy Carter nodded. "I'll keep monitoring the distress signals, and I'll record everything for the council hearing we're probably going to face later." Jake felt proud of his crew. This was what he loved about humans. When something needed to be done, they did it. They didn't wait for permission or approval. They saw a problem, and they fixed it. The ship dropped out of warp near Kepler 442b. The planet looked beautiful from space, but Jake knew that under the surface, disaster was unfolding. A mining colony was built inside a massive underground dome, and that dome was failing. "Amy, open a channel to the colony." "Channel open, sir." "This is Captain Morrison of the UES Defiance. We're here to help. What's your status?" A desperate voice came through the speakers. "Captain, thank God you're here. The dome is collapsing. We've got maybe 12 hours before the whole thing comes down. Most of our transport ships were damaged in the quake." Jake looked at his crew. 12 hours to save 12,000 people. It would be tight, but they could do it. "Don't worry," Jake said into the communicator. "The human fleet is on its way. We're going to get everyone out." As more human ships arrived, Jake knew they were about to make history. They were going to save those colonists, and they were going to do it without asking anyone's permission. The Galactic Council could debate and argue all they wanted. Humans were going to take action. The human rescue fleet worked like a well-oiled machine. 12 ships surrounded the dying planet, each one taking on a specific role in the massive rescue operation. Jake Morrison watched from the bridge as his crew coordinated with the other vessels. "Lisa, what's the status on the colony's structural integrity?" Jake asked. Lisa Brooks studied her readings carefully. "Not good, Captain. The underground dome has multiple stress fractures. The seismic activity is getting worse. I'd say we have maybe 10 hours before complete collapse." On the surface of Kepler 442b, Marine Colonel Ben Davis led the ground rescue. "Teams, He was a big man with steady hands and a calm voice, exactly what people needed in a crisis. His Marines were setting up evacuation points around the colony's emergency exits. "This is Colonel Davis to all rescue teams," he spoke into his communicator. "We have confirmed locations of all civilian shelters. Emergency Response Chief Murphy, what's your status?" Helen Murphy was already inside the colony, leading civilian evacuation efforts. She had 20 years of experience in disaster response, and she moved through the chaos like it was a normal day at work. "Colonel, we've got about 3,000 people ready for immediate evacuation. The problem is the transport tubes. Half of them are blocked by debris." "Understood. My teams are working on clearing those routes now." Back on the Defiance, Amy Carter was monitoring communications from the Galactic Council. What she heard made her angry. "Captain," she said, "the Council is still debating. They've formed Subcommittee 7 Alpha to discuss environmental impact. The Zephyrians want to know if our rescue ships will damage the planet's atmosphere." Jake shook his head. "Any word on when they might actually make a decision?" "The Valdari representative says they need at least 48 hours for proper telepathic consensus building. The Hive thinkers want to study whether individual rescue goes against natural selection." 48 hours, Jake repeated. "Those people will be dead in 10 hours, and the Council needs 48 hours to decide if we should save them." Meanwhile, Lisa Brooks was working on a solution to speed up the evacuation. The colony's transport systems were too slow and too damaged. They needed something faster. "Captain, I have an idea," she said. "What if we reroute power from our weapon systems and create a massive gravitic lifter? We could lift the evacuation shuttles directly from the colony to our ships. Is that safe?" Jake asked. "Probably not. But it's a lot safer than leaving those people to die while the Council debates." "Do it." Lisa began the complex process of rewiring the ship's power systems. It was dangerous work, and it went against every safety protocol in the book. But it might save thousands of lives. On the planet's surface, Medical Officer Ryan Clark was setting up field hospitals near the evacuation points. He had medical supplies from all 12 human ships, and he was treating injured colonists as fast as they could be brought to him. "We've got a lot of crush injuries," he reported to Jake. "Looks like the initial earthquake trapped people under debris. Nothing we can't handle, but we need to keep the evacuation moving." Pilot Sarah Evans was flying the most dangerous missions of her career. She piloted her shuttle through the unstable underground passages, picking up colonists who were trapped in remote sections of the colony. The passages were filling with volcanic gas, and the walls were cracking more with each trip. "This is Evans to Defiance," she called, as she guided her shuttle through a particularly narrow tunnel. "I've got 42 colonists aboard, bringing them up now." "Copy that, Sarah. Great work." But while the humans worked to save lives, the Galactic Council was growing more upset about their actions. Elder Zixthara's crystalline form was flickering with agitation. "This is chaos," she declared to the assembled representatives. "The humans are acting without proper authorization. They're violating Protocol 847C, which clearly states that all major actions require unanimous consent." The Valdari mind speaker Veltar was equally disturbed. "This sets a dangerous precedent. If every species simply acts when they believe action is necessary, what happens to our careful deliberations? What happens to the wisdom of consensus?" The Aquatic Merlin representative was worried about contamination. "The human ships are not following proper decontamination procedures. They could be spreading bacteria from one world to another. And what about the natural order?" asked the gaseous Verinathi representative. "Perhaps some of those colonists were meant to die. Perhaps this rescue is interfering with cosmic destiny." Ambassador Claire Watson stood up in the center of the Great Hall. She was surrounded by representatives from 246 alien species, all of them angry about what humans were doing. "You want to talk about cosmic destiny?" she said, her voice carrying across the chamber. "I'll tell you about cosmic destiny. Right. Now, while you're sitting here debating whether we have the right to save people, my species is actually saving them. But proper procedure must be followed," insisted the Hivathinker representative. "Rules exist for a reason. Order must be maintained." "Order?" Claire laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "You call this order? 12,000 people are about to die, and you're worried about paperwork." The rescue operation continued despite the council's disapproval. Colonel Davis and his Marines had cleared most of the blocked transport tubes. Helen Murphy had organized the civilians into efficient evacuation groups. Ryan Clark was treating the injured as fast as they arrived, and Lisa Brooks had done something remarkable. Her improvised gravitic lifter was working. Instead of slowly ferrying people through dangerous underground passages, the human ships could now lift entire shuttles directly from the colony to safety. "It's working," Lisa reported. To Jake, "We're moving people 3 times faster than before." "How many have we evacuated so far?" "About 7,000. We're making good progress." But the progress came at a cost. During one particularly dangerous rescue run, pilot Sarah Evans encountered a cave-in. Her shuttle was trapped, and she had 30 colonists aboard. "Evans to Defiance," she called, her voice tight with worry. "I'm trapped in Section 7. The tunnel ceiling collapsed behind me. I can't get out the way I came in." Jake felt his heart sink. Sarah was one of his best pilots, and she was trapped with 30 innocent people. "Is there another way out?" he asked. "Maybe. There's an old mining shaft that might connect to the surface. But it's filled with volcanic gas, and it's not on any of our maps. Sarah, don't take any unnecessary risks." "Captain, with respect, this whole operation is an unnecessary risk. But it's the right thing to do." 20 minutes later, Sarah Evans emerged from an abandoned mine shaft on the planet's surface. She had found a way out, and all 30 colonists were safe. It was exactly the kind of thinking that made humans different from the other species. In the Galaxy Dot, as the rescue operation continued, Jake received an urgent message from Admiral Sullivan. Her face appeared on his screen, and she looked worried. "Captain, I've just received word from the Council. They're threatening to expel humanity from the Galactic Council entirely. They say we're violating the fundamental principles of galactic civilization." "What do you want me to do, Admiral?" "Keep saving people, Captain. We'll deal with the politics later. Right now, those colonists need us." By the end of the day, the human rescue fleet had saved 11,847 people from the collapsing colony. Only 3 human rescue personnel were lost in the operation, and they had died as heroes, saving others. The mining colony on Kepler 442b was completely destroyed 12 hours after the rescue was completed. If the humans had waited for the Galactic Council to make a decision, every single colonist would have died. But instead of celebrating their success, the humans now faced a new problem. The entire galaxy was angry with them for acting without permission. The question was, what would happen next? The news of the successful rescue spread through the galaxy like wildfire. In the great halls of the Galactic Council, emergency sessions were called one after another. The alien representatives were not happy about what humans had done. Elder Zixthara of the Zephyrians stood before the assembled council, her crystalline form pulsing with anger. "This is unprecedented," she declared. "The humans have completely ignored our authority. They have acted without unanimous consent. This cannot be allowed to stand." "I agree," said Mind Speaker Veltar of the Valdari. "If every species decides to act on their own, what happens to our system of government? What happens to the wisdom of careful deliberation?" The aquatic Merlin representative was equally upset. The humans have set a dangerous precedent. What if other species start taking action in our ocean worlds without understanding our needs? What if they try to help us without asking first? The gaseous Varanasi representative spoke in his whispery voice. Solid matter beings helping other solid matter beings without proper authorization. This violates the natural order of things. Around the galaxy, other alien species were having similar reactions. The crystalline builders were worried that other races might start constructing things without proper architectural studies. The plasma entities couldn't understand why anyone would want to save physical beings at all. But the rescued colonists had a different opinion. They were alive because humans had acted quickly. They didn't care about council protocols or unanimous consent. They cared about the fact that they were breathing and their children were safe. Admiral Kate Sullivan received the summons to appear before the Galactic Council 3 days after the rescue. She knew this was coming. She also knew that she was about to face the anger of 246 alien species. The great amphitheater of the council was packed. Every representative was there, and they all looked angry. Kate walked to the center of the hall, alone, wearing her dress uniform. She had never felt smaller in her life. Admiral Sullivan, began Elder Zixtara, you are here to answer for humanity's actions at Kepler 442b. You violated Council Protocol 847c, which clearly states that all major actions require unanimous consent from all member species. Kate stood straight and tall. Yes, Elder, we did violate that protocol. You admit it? The Zephyrian seemed surprised. I admit that we acted without waiting for your permission. I also admit that we saved nearly 12,000 lives while you were debating whether we had the right to save them. The Valdari mind speaker leaned forward. You disrupted the natural order, Admiral. Some of those colonists may have been meant to die. Your actions may have interfered with cosmic destiny. Kate felt her temper rising, but she kept her voice steady. With respect, mind speaker, I don't believe that anyone is meant to die in a collapsing mine while politicians debate whether to save them. Politicians? The Hivithinker representative sounded offended. We are not politicians. We are the representatives of advanced civilizations. We follow proper procedures to ensure wise decisions. And how long do your proper procedures take? Kate asked. You are going to debate for 48 hours. Those people had 10 hours to live. Your wisdom would have been worthless to them. The aquatic Merlin representative spoke up. But what about the consequences? What about contamination protocols? What about environmental impact studies? You cannot simply ignore these things. Kate looked around the amphitheater at all the alien faces staring at her. You want to talk about consequences? I'll tell you about consequences. 12,000 people are alive today because we acted. 3 human rescue workers died saving them. That's a consequence I can live with. But you had no authority, insisted the crystalline builder representative. You cannot simply decide to act without proper authorization. You're right, Kate said. We had no authority except the authority of conscience. We had no permission except the permission of our own moral code. And we had no justification except the justification of human decency. The council erupted in angry voices. The Zephyrians were demanding sanctions against humanity. The Valdari were talking about expelling humans from the council entirely. The Varanasi were questioning whether solid matter beings should be allowed to make decisions at all. But Kate wasn't finished. You want to punish us for saving lives? Go ahead. You want to expel us from the council? That's your choice. But I want you to remember something. While you were sitting here debating the proper way to request permission to save people, those people were dying. Every minute you spent in committee was a minute they didn't have. Elder Zixtara's crystalline form flickered with rage. This is chaos, Admiral. This is madness. If every species acts without proper authorization, the galaxy will fall into disorder. No, Kate said firmly. This is what happens when beings with conscience see other beings in danger. This is what happens when someone decides that saving lives is more important than following bureaucratic procedures. A Hiva-thinker representative stood up. You speak of conscience, but what about responsibility? What about the greater good? Individual action leads to chaos. Individual action leads to results, Kate replied. While you were forming Subcommittee 7 Alpha to study the environmental impact, we were pulling people out of a collapsing mine. While you were conducting telepathic consensus-building exercises, we were saving families. The debate continued. For hours. The alien representatives brought up every possible argument against human action. They talked about jurisdiction and authority and proper procedures. They discussed the importance of unanimous consent and the dangers of acting without permission. But Kate Sullivan had only one answer for all of them. We saved lives. While you talked, we acted. While you debated, we rescued. While you formed committees, we saved nearly 12,000 people. The aquatic Merlan representative tried a different approach. What if your actions had made things worse? What if you had caused more deaths? And we would have taken responsibility for that, Kate said. But we didn't make things worse. We made things better. We turned a disaster into a rescue. We turned death into life. The Valdari mind speaker spoke telepathically to several other representatives before addressing Kate again. You show no remorse for violating our procedures. You're right, Kate said. I show no remorse for saving lives. I show no regret for acting when action was needed. I show no shame for putting human decency ahead of bureaucratic procedures. The council session lasted for 12 hours. By the end, several alien species were threatening to leave the council if humans were not punished. Trade agreements were being suspended. Diplomatic relations were being frozen. But Kate Sullivan stood her ground. You can punish us all you want, she said. You can expel us from the council. You can end trade agreements. You can freeze diplomatic relations. But you cannot change the fact that we saved those people. And when the next crisis comes, when the next group of beings needs help, we will do the same thing again. The session ended with no resolution. The alien species were too angry to make rational decisions, and the humans were too proud of their rescue to apologize. As Kate left the amphitheater, she wondered if humanity had just made the biggest mistake in its history. They had saved 12,000 lives, but they might have lost their place in galactic civilization. The question was, would it be worth it? Only time would tell, but deep down, Kate knew the answer. Saving lives was always worth it, no matter what the consequences. That was what made humans different from the other species in the galaxy. That was what made them human. 6 weeks had passed since Admiral Kate Sullivan's confrontation with the Galactic Council. A diplomatic freeze between humans and most alien species continued. Trade agreements remained suspended. Many alien worlds had banned human ships from their space. But something unexpected was happening across the galaxy. The news of the human rescue at Kepler 442b had spread to every world, every species, every corner of known space. And younger members of various alien civilizations were asking uncomfortable questions. On the industrial world of Gamma Centauri, a massive factory explosion had trapped 800 Zephyrian workers deep underground. The local authorities, following proper procedure, had begun forming committees to study the situation. Subcommittee 12 Beta was analyzing structural integrity. Subcommittee 15 Gamma was studying environmental impact. Subcommittee 3 Alpha was debating whether individual rescue was morally justified. But a group of young Zephyrians had heard about the human rescue. They were led by a crystalline being named Kixandra, who was barely 50 years old by Zephyrian standards. While her elders debated, she organized an immediate rescue effort. "We cannot wait for the committees to finish," she told her followers. "Those workers will die while we debate the proper way to save them." The young Zephyrians broke into the collapsed factory using improvised mining equipment. They worked for 18 hours straight, pulling workers from the wreckage. When Elder Zixthara learned what they had done, she was horrified. "This is chaos," the elder declared. "You have violated every protocol. You have acted without authority." "We have saved 800 lives," Kixandra replied. "We have acted with conscience." The same pattern was emerging on other worlds. On the water world of Aquatica Prime, a massive storm was approaching the coastal cities. Traditionally, the Merlins would spend weeks in deep-sea meditation, seeking guidance from their ancestors about the proper response. But a group of young Merlins, led by a warrior named Dorthala, began immediate evacuation procedures. They moved thousands of their people to safety in the deep ocean cities, ignoring the protests of their elders. "The human example has infected our youth," complained the Merlan elder to the Galactic Council. "They speak of taking action without asking for consent. This is madness." On the gas giant of Nethys, young Viranathi were helping solid matter beings for the first time in their history. On the hive world of Korthven, individual hive thinkers were making independent decisions. The galaxy was changing, and the old order was being challenged everywhere. Captain Jake Morrison found himself at the center of this galactic revolution. His ship, the USS Defiance, received messages from across the galaxy. Some thanked him for inspiring action. Others condemned him for corrupting alien youth. "Captain," Amy Carter reported from the communications station, "we're receiving another message from the Zephyrian homeworld. Elder Zixthara is demanding that we stop what she calls the spread of human madness." Jake looked at the message. On his screen, the elder was clearly upset, but Jake felt no guilt about what was happening. "Amy, send a reply. Tell the elder that we're not spreading madness. We're spreading the idea that sometimes the right thing to do is to simply do the right thing." Meanwhile, Lisa Brooks was working on something new. She had been contacted by young scientists from several alien species who wanted to learn about human-style innovation. They were frustrated with the slow pace of committee-approved research. "Captain," Lisa said, "I've been working with a young Valdari engineer named Sevtar. He's developed a new propulsion system by combining human engineering with Valdari telepathic controls. It's incredible. What do the Valdari elders think about this cooperation? They're not happy. They say Sevtar is violating the principles of proper research. But his engine design could revolutionize space travel." The revolution was spreading beyond just emergency response. Young aliens were embracing human-style innovation, human-style decision-making, and human-style individual responsibility. The galaxy's youth were no longer content to wait for committee approval before acting. Medical Officer Ryan Clark had established field hospitals on 12 different worlds, working with young alien healers who wanted to learn human emergency medicine. They were saving lives using techniques that had never been approved by the medical committees of their species. The young Merlan healer, Lyandra, has developed a new treatment for plasma burns, Ryan reported to Jake. She combined human surgical techniques with Merlan regenerative medicine. The results are amazing. What do the Merlan medical authorities think? They're calling it dangerous experimentation. But we've saved hundreds of lives using her techniques. On the bridge of the Defiance, Jake watched the reports coming in from across the galaxy. The old system of unanimous consent was breaking down. Young aliens were acting independently, making decisions based on conscience rather than committee approval. "Sir," Tony Walsh said from the navigation station, "we're receiving a priority message from Admiral Sullivan." Admiral Sullivan's face appeared on the screen. She looked tired but determined. Captain, we have a new situation. The Galactic Council is in complete chaos. Half the member species are dealing with youth rebellions. The other half are demanding that we be expelled from the Council entirely. What's our orders, Admiral? Keep doing what you're doing. The galaxy is changing, and we're at the center of it. Some of the changes are good, some are bad, but all of them are necessary. But the changes weren't without cost. On several worlds, generational conflicts were tearing apart ancient societies. Young aliens were rejecting the wisdom of their elders. Traditional authority structures were crumbling. Elder Zixthara called another emergency session of the Galactic Council. The humans have infected our youth with their madness, she declared. They speak of conscience and individual action. They reject the wisdom of consensus. This must be stopped. The Valdari mind speaker agreed. The young ones no longer respect telepathic guidance. They make decisions without consulting the collective wisdom. This is chaos. But Ambassador Claire Watson stood up in the council chamber. You call it chaos. I call it progress. Your young people are learning that sometimes the right thing to do is to simply do it. They're learning that committee approval is not more important than saving lives. But without proper authority, without consensus, without careful deliberation, how can we maintain order? Asked the Hivathinker representative. The same way we've always maintained order, Claire replied. Through conscience, through moral responsibility, through the simple understanding that some things are right and some things are wrong, regardless of what any committee says. The debate continued for days. The older generation of aliens wanted to restore the old system. The younger generation wanted to embrace human-style individual action. The galaxy was splitting along generational lines, but then something happened that would change everything. A new crisis emerged, one that would test whether the galaxy's youth could really make a difference. The Andromeda incursion had begun. Unknown alien ships from outside the galaxy were attacking 3 star systems simultaneously. Under the old system, the Council would spend months debating a response strategy. But months of debate wouldn't help the billions of beings who were under attack right now. Captain Jake Morrison received the emergency alert on his ship's communication system. Amy, patch me through to all the young alien leaders we've been working with. Within minutes, Jake was speaking to Kixandra the Zephyrian, Dorthala the Merlin, Sevtar the Valdari, and dozens of other young aliens who had embraced human-style action. We have a choice, Jake told them. We can wait for the Council to form committees and debate proper responses. Or we can act now, together, to defend our galaxy. The answer came back immediately from all of them. They would act now. They would defend their worlds. They would prove that the new way was better than the old way. The battle for the future of the galaxy was about to begin. The Andromeda incursion hit the galaxy like a storm. 3 star systems were under attack simultaneously by unknown alien forces from outside the galaxy. The invaders were using weapons and tactics that no one had ever seen before. In the great halls of the Galactic Council, emergency sessions were called. Elder Zixthara stood before the assembled representatives, her crystalline form flickering with worry and confusion. We must form a committee to study these invaders, she declared. We need to understand their technology, their motivations, their weaknesses. This will require careful deliberation. The Valdari mind speaker nodded. Yes, we must conduct proper telepathic analysis. We need to understand the psychological profiles of these beings. This could take months of careful study. The aquatic Merlin representative agreed. We must also consider the environmental impact of any military response. What if our defense efforts damage the ocean worlds? What if we accidentally harm innocent sea life? But while the council debated, the invaders continued their assault. Entire worlds were being destroyed. Billions of beings were dying. The old system of unanimous consent was failing when it was needed most. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance, watching the tactical displays. The invader ships were massive, heavily armed, and completely ruthless. They were destroying everything in their path. "Amy, patch me through to the emergency network," he ordered. Within minutes, Jake was speaking to a network of young alien leaders across the galaxy. Kixandra the Zephyrin was coordinating defense efforts on the industrial worlds. Dorthala the Merlin was organizing underwater resistance on the ocean planets. Sevtar the Valduri was using his new propulsion technology to move ships faster than ever before. "We can't wait for the Council to make a decision," Jake told them. "These invaders are destroying our worlds right now. We need to act." "I agree," said Kixandra, her crystalline form glowing with determination. "My people have weapons and ships. We can fight." Dorthala's voice came through the water-filled communicator. "The Merlan resistance is ready. We have underwater cities that can serve as bases." Sevtar's telepathic voice was calm but urgent. "My new engines can give us a speed advantage. We can hit the invaders fast and hard." Young aliens from dozens of species joined the emergency network. They had ships, weapons, knowledge, and most importantly, the willingness to act without waiting for permission. "This is Admiral Sullivan to all Allied forces," came Kate's voice over the communications system. "We're forming an emergency defense fleet. All ships willing to defend the galaxy report to coordinates Alpha 77. The response was immediate. Human ships arrived first, followed by Zephyrian vessels commanded by young crystalline warriors. Merlin submarines surfaced from the ocean worlds, ready to fight in space for the first time in their history. Valdari ships powered by Sevtar's new engines moved like lightning across the star fields. Elder Zixthara was horrified when she learned what was happening. "This is chaos," she declared to the emergency council session. "They're forming a military force without proper authorization. They're acting without unanimous consent. They're defending our galaxy while we debate whether they have the right to defend it." Ambassador Claire Watson replied, "Maybe it's time we asked ourselves which is more important, proper procedure or survival." The improvised defense fleet gathered at the coordinates Admiral Sullivan had specified. Jake Morrison looked at the tactical display and felt amazed at what he saw. Ships from dozens of species, all working together, all ready to fight for their galaxy. "This is incredible," said Lisa Brooks from the engineering station. "I'm reading ship designs I've never seen before." These young aliens have been innovating, creating new technologies, while their elders were forming committees. The first battle took place in the Kepler system, where the invaders had destroyed 2 planets and were moving toward a third. Allied fleet dropped out of warp and immediately engaged the enemy. The battle was fierce but brief. The invaders had superior individual ships, but they had never faced a coordinated defense from multiple species. Zephyrian crystal weapons cut through their shields. Merlin water-based projectiles disabled their engines. Valdari telepathic attacks confused their crews. Human tactical coordination tied it all together. "Enemy fleet is retreating," reported Tony Walsh from the navigation station. "They're falling back to the Vega system." The Allied fleet pursued immediately. There was no time for committees or debates. The invaders had to be stopped before they could regroup and attack again. The second battle took place near Vega Prime. This time, the invaders were ready for the multi-species attack. But the young aliens had been learning from each engagement. They adapted their tactics, shared their knowledge, and fought as a unified force. Medical Officer Ryan Clark worked alongside alien healers to treat the wounded from both battles. "We're learning so much from each other," he reported to Jake. The young Merlin healer Lyandra has taught us how to treat energy weapon burns. The Zephyrian medic Zixtel has shown us how to repair crystalline life forms. The third and final battle took place at the edge of the galaxy, where the invaders were trying to establish a permanent base. The Allied fleet had grown to include ships from nearly every species in the galaxy, all commanded by young beings who believed in action over deliberation. "This is it," Jake announced to the fleet. "If we stop them here, they can't establish a foothold in our galaxy. If we fail, they'll keep coming back." The battle lasted for 6 hours. The invaders fought desperately, knowing this was their last chance. But the Allied fleet fought with something the invaders didn't have: the certainty that they were protecting their homes, their families, their entire way of life. When the last invader ship was destroyed, the galaxy erupted in celebration. The impossible had happened. Young beings from dozens of species had worked together to defend their galaxy, and they had done it without waiting for permission from anyone. Admiral Kate Sullivan's voice came over the fleet communications. "All Allied ships, this is Admiral Sullivan. You have done something incredible today. You have proven that when conscience and courage work together, nothing is impossible." But the victory was about more than just defeating the invaders. It was about proving that the new way worked better than the old way. Action had succeeded where deliberation would have failed. Back at the Galactic Council, Elder Zixthara stood before the assembled representatives. Her crystalline form was dim with exhaustion and confusion. "Perhaps," she said quietly, "perhaps we have become too careful, too slow, too afraid of making mistakes to risk making progress." The Valdari mind speaker nodded slowly. "The young ones saved us while we debated. They acted while we deliberated. They succeeded while we formed committees." Ambassador Claire Watson stood up in the center of the hall. "The galaxy has learned something important today. Sometimes the best way to ask for permission is to prove that you deserve it." Over the following months, the Galactic Council underwent fundamental reforms. The new system balanced careful deliberation with the ability to take immediate action when necessary. The Morrison Doctrine, named after Captain Jake Morrison, became part of galactic law. It stated that in emergency situations, beings with the ability to help had not just the right, but the responsibility to act. The young aliens who had participated in the defense became leaders in their respective species. Kixandra was elected to represent the new generation of Zephyrians. Dadathala became a war hero among the Merlins. Sevtar's engineering innovations revolutionized space travel across the galaxy. Captain Jake Morrison received new orders from Admiral Sullivan. His ship would explore the galaxy's edge, seek out new civilizations, and act with the authority of the reformed Galactic Council whenever immediate action was required. As the UEC Defiance prepared to leave Council space, Jake stood on the bridge looking out at the stars. His crew had started something that changed the entire galaxy. They had proven that sometimes the right thing to do was simply to do the right thing, permission or no permission. "Captain," Amy Carter said from the communications station, "we're receiving a message from Admiral Sullivan." Kate Sullivan's face appeared on the screen one last time. "To all species of the galaxy," she said, "you have learned something important. You have learned that the greatest risk is sometimes not taking any risk at all. You have learned that conscience and courage are more important than committees and consensus." She paused, looking directly at Jake. "The galaxy is a different place now because a few humans decided that saving lives was more important than following rules. Remember that when the next crisis comes. Remember that when someone needs help. And remember that sometimes the best way to ask for permission is to show that you deserve it." The transmission ended. Jake Morrison looked at his crew, the people who had helped change the galaxy forever. "Well," he said with a smile, "I guess we should go find some more people who need help." The U's Defiance warped away from Council space, heading toward the unknown regions of the galaxy. Behind them, they left a civilization that had learned the most important lesson humans had to teach. Sometimes, the right thing to do is simply to do the right thing. A galaxy would never be the same. And that was exactly how it should be.